And I think the biggest problem is we all use these reports, the P&L, right? The cash flow statement, the balance sheet. No offense. These are horrible reports for business owners. They're wonderful for bankers and accountants in Wall Street, but they don't actually tell you what's going on in your business, and no single report gives you a total picture.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Rocky Lalvani is the Profit Answer Man, dedicated to helping entrepreneurs prioritize profit and ensure they get paid. As a certified Profit First professional, he implements Mike Michalowicz's Profit First system, changing the accounting formula from sales minus expenses equals profit to sales minus profit equals expenses, ensuring that profit comes first. This approach emphasizes that people come before money. Rocky's journey began when his parents immigrated to the United States with nothing when he was 2 years old, in their 40s, and starting over for the second time. Despite many struggles, including losing his mother at the age of 7, Rocky has achieved financial and life success. He loves to share his story and inspire others to achieve their dreams even faster. You can learn from Rocky the importance of putting profit first while maintaining a people-centered approach to business. So Rocky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Candy. Excited to be here with you today.
I'm happy to have you here too, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before I get into questions I have for you on the topic, I'd love for you to share your story of how you became an entrepreneur.
So this was a long, slow journey. As a kid, I was very entrepreneurial. I had a paper route. We lived close to New York City, so I would go into New York City and I would buy stuff wholesale, and I'd come back and split it up and sell it at 100% markup to kids in my school and to teachers and everything else. So I always had money. I always wanted to make money, but we were told back then you have to go to college. And so I ended up going to college. And during this time, I was also a tech geek. So you have to realize this is the early days of the home computer. The Apple II just came out. I think I was like 15, 16 years old. I walked in with $2,000 in cash from all the money I was making, and I bought a computer. And one of the first things I learned was how to use a spreadsheet. There was a program back then called VisiCalc, and it was the first electronic spreadsheet. I was actually teaching accountants how to go from paper ledger to doing this. And even in college, I got a job with a bank, and they're like, you know how to work on these spreadsheets? I'm like, yeah. And so this is what I was doing. And my original idea was I wanted to start a business building spreadsheets, but there was no YouTube. I couldn't figure out how to start a business, couldn't figure out how to market, didn't even understand the value of what that skill brought. And so I go to college, I get out of college, I do what I'm supposed to, I get a job because I couldn't figure out exactly. And the job turned out to be well. And I started making a good amount of money. And I always say good is the enemy of great, right? You get comfortable. And so for a long time, I was comfortable, but I was always dabbling on the side, doing different things, some real estate, some other types of things. And because I understood the principles of money and what I learned as a kid, I built my wealth as an employee. And at some point I was like, what do I really want to do? Because I did this to make money, not because I loved it. And that's when I really started getting serious about starting my own business. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out where my skills met the market and I could provide value. And I think the biggest aha I got was I assumed business owners understood the business of business. It turns out most business owners love what they do, and finance isn't on that list in accounting and reading their reports isn't.
Right.
And yet, if you're a business owner and you don't understand the numbers in your business, you're going to be in trouble, which is, I think, why so many businesses go under. And I'm like, this is kind of a natural for me. I have an MBA, I understand the numbers, I understand how to make all this stuff work. And so that's when I decided to go out and do this as my entrepreneurial career. Joined with, Mike Michalowicz and Profit First. The system that they use is the system I've been using my whole life. Like, that's the way I do things naturally. And I was like, well, I could write my own book and do all this stuff. But I was like, I don't love doing that. Why not just partner with them? They hand me everything and I can just go do what I love, which is helping business owners make and keep more money.
Right. Well, I know entrepreneurs often are so busy and they think they might have numbers in their head of, how much, they're selling and, oh, well, I still have a little bit of money in the bank, right? So I must be okay. But they don't really look at all of the numbers. And even if they do, they might be looking at, oh, I brought in this much revenue, but they're not really looking at profit. So can you talk about the importance of focusing on the bottom line, not just the top line in business?
So honestly, the top line revenue is what we call a vanity metric, believe it or not. And yet that's the one most business owners focus on. And I think because it's the easiest one to get. You know what your sales were today, right? And while top line revenue is wonderful, I think the bigger question is, what's your gross profit? And what I mean by that is your gross profit actually tells you how much you have to run your business. So back when I was in high school, I would go into New York City, I'd buy something for $5 and I'd sell it for 10. So I don't have $10 to spend because I had to pay the $5 out. So now I need to run my business on that $5. The reality is, for a lot of businesses, they don't even have that kind of margin on gross profit. But yet they behave like they do. I've got $1 million business. I can spend $1 million. No, in reality, maybe you have a $200,000 or $300,000 business, which is what you really have to run your business on, and that's what you need to maintain. Well, now if you've got to run it on $200,000 or $300,000, but you're behaving like you've got $1 million, at the end of the day, you don't have a lot left over for you, the business owner. And I think that's where the problem comes in. We're not focused on the bottom line because most business owners don't find out the bottom line until tax time. And by then, it's old news, and they're always looking forward, not backward. And so I think that's the biggest problem is we focus on the wrong things. And we don't always ask the right questions. And that's where the trouble begins. At the end of the day, you're in business to make profit. And if you don't know what that profit is, if you don't know where most of your profit's coming from, if you don't know what your most profitable work is, you're in trouble. And I think that's a big part of it. It's funny. So you watch football? Not really.
I don't really watch
I'm
sports too
not.
much.
You know what? I'm not a big fan either. But here's the thing. Imagine it's the Super Bowl, right? And right before the game, they come on and they go, hey, we're going to play the Super Bowl a little different this year. We're going to erase all the lines on the field. We know where we're at because this is the Super Bowl. So we know exactly where we're at. And we're going to turn the clock off because we know exactly what quarter we're in and how much time is left. And we don't need a scoreboard because we know when we scored. So we're just going to keep it in our mind. How many people do you think would watch that game if there were no referees, no lines, nobody? And yet,
No
here we are. How are we running our business? Exactly like that. So you're watching a game and you expect this. You're playing real life with real money and you don't. And I think that's the key. If you're going to be in business, you got to have a scoreboard. You got to know what quarter you're on. You have to know where you're at because you're going to behave differently in different parts of the game and different plays, depending on what you need to do. And yet we don't. And it drives me crazy. I don't know if you found a better solution.
No. It reminds me of a story, that I can share too, is I had someone come to me years ago who they had two bookkeepers. They were a larger company. They had two bookkeepers already on staff, but he says, I don't understand. It says that I do have profit, but I don't have a lot of money in the bank and my business is increasing like crazy. I mean, a couple of years ago, we were 3 million. We're over, 6 million now. We're probably going to be at 10 million, next year. Again, looking at that top line. And I ended up finding with him, where some of those problems were, and, increasing labor was, significant compared to what it should have been. And then they weren't thinking about the fact that they're drawing money out of the business for the owners that wasn't run through payroll. So, it didn't reduce the profit. So there's a whole lot that goes on along that too. So even if you're looking at profit, it may not really be what you have left, too. So I don't know if you want to touch on that for the entrepreneur too, just to help them understand the different concepts of what really is profit, what is cash, and how does that work together?
And I think the biggest problem is we all use these reports, the P&L, right? The cash flow statement, the balance sheet. No offense. These are horrible reports for business owners. They're wonderful for bankers and accountants in Wall Street, but they don't actually tell you what's going on in your business, and no single report gives you a total picture. So like you mentioned, I can look at my P&L. My P&L says I'm profitable, and yet I have no cash. Why? Well, the cash disappeared on the balance sheet.
Mhm.
How many people do you know that look at a balance sheet and look at the changes in the balance sheet month to month? Everyone says the balance sheet's a static report. It's not a static report. A balance sheet should be looked at over time, no less than once a month. And you've got to notice what the differences are. So the balance sheet doesn't even tell you the difference. It just tells you, okay, here's last month, here's this month. And you're playing Where's Waldo? If you've got kids, they give you those two pictures. Find the 8 differences, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you're looking at an entire block of numbers, you're trying to find the 8 differences that are most valuable. Money disappears because it's an accounts receivable. So while you sold it, until you collect it, it's not cash in your bank account. And if you're not managing your accounts receivable, you don't know how long it's been since you've been paid, you don't have a good, I work a lot with the guys in the trades, and I'm their clients too. I have an outstanding bill right now to someone who did work for me a month ago. I have an outstanding bill because I don't have a bill. Right? You don't bill for your work. How are you getting paid? And
Right.
yet this is what they do, and they wonder why they're in trouble. So where is that even going to show up on any of these reports? It's not, because it didn't even make it there. And I think this is the problem. The reports don't show you what you truly need to know. And unfortunately, I think the accounting profession has changed. It used to be that accountants had the time to sit down with business owners and talk about their business. Now they're so busy in tax time trying to fill out boxes, they don't even have these types of conversations anymore. And so the business owner is just sitting there trying to figure out what went wrong. And people are talking a language they don't understand. And I think that's what makes it difficult. And that's why the struggles are there. And it's being able to actually interpret the reports and know what to look for and to keep an eye on all these different dials. So for our clients, what we do is we actually look at all the different levers in the business, and we build a math equation around their business. Because when you start to look at how these different levers affect the business, everything from lead flow to conversion rates to average sales price to total revenue to profit margin to overhead, employees, marketing, accounts receivable, payable, all of these different things, when you start to understand how they're all associated with each other, then you can very easily make decisions. But the problem is, for most business owners, they don't get it. And most accountants don't sit down and talk to them in that way, or they don't want to listen. That's the other problem. I'm too
Right.
busy to look at the numbers. Oh, maybe you're too busy because you haven't looked at the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Because that was my goal too, is really educate entrepreneurs so they understand what those numbers mean. And I think some people also think, well, I'm not a numbers person, right? I'm a creative person. And so I'm really good at this and I'm not really good at the numbers. And so I think there's this misconception too that they're not really going to be able to understand. So they don't want to even show that they don't have that experience. And I try to tell people, don't worry about it. Like, we're happy to explain what those numbers mean, because just like someone might be very artistic and I'm not great at that, right? Then I can help explain things too. So I do think that we need to work together to really help people understand those numbers, because my goal really is help people be successful so the businesses don't fail. Right. So that's why I have this podcast. That's why you're on my podcast too, to really share information with them. So I'd love to talk about the profit equation though, right? You're talking about you're a profit first certified professional, and a lot of people don't really know what profit first means. Like, it sounds great. Okay, profit first. But why is the profit equation that most people learn, that, it's sales minus expenses equals profit? Why is that wrong?
So think about it. And if you look at the P&L, what do most people do? They look at the bottom. They go straight to the bottom. What's my profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing that because it's a leftover. It's an afterthought. I shouldn't have to go to the bottom of my P&L to know my profit. I should know my profit when I sell the item.
Mm-hmm.
And I should be able to take that profit immediately. Because if that's not the case, then we've got a broken business model. And this is why so many businesses fail. They don't actually build the right business model. I can't tell you how many times we sit down with clients who want growth, and they come to me after they've grown a bit, and I sit down and I look at them historically and go, well, 3 years ago, you were selling a third as much as you are today, and you're making the same amount of money. So you're doing 3 times the work for the same price. That's not a good way to do business. Like, let's build a model that actually, when you make 3 times the sales, you get 4 times the money, because that would make a lot more sense to me. So when profit is an afterthought, it's I'm going to reinvest in my business. No, you're not. You're wasting money in your business. Right. So if you were going to invest in a business, would you expect a return on that investment?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Would you expect to know when they're going to pay you back?
Yes.
Yeah. How many of you reinvest in your business, which is risky, and know when you're going to get paid back and how much? And it's just a whole changing of the mindset of how you think about this is really what it comes down to. You've got to say, if I'm going to make this investment, I expect a profit, a return. What is that? When's it coming back? How is it going to happen? And then doing the math to show that it actually is going to do that. And like Candy said, if you hate doing the math, that's okay. You're not supposed to do everything in your business, right? Go put somebody in the seat who knows how to do that so that you can work less and make more. Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. And so Mike changed the equation because he's had multiple businesses and he made money, but he never made as much as he should have. And then he lost it all. And he's like, it's no wonder we have the wrong mindset when it comes to profit. We keep thinking of it as something that'll happen tomorrow, and it shouldn't. You went into business to make money today. Why aren't you actually making a profit? So what happens is when you put profit first, you constrain the rest of your business. You keep it lean, you keep it small, you keep it efficient. And that's really the key. And if you can't do that, then you're going to struggle.
But someone might be listening and saying, like, okay, I understand the concept of what you're saying. Like, I should think about what that profit really is and, kind of control the expenses. But sometimes there are things you don't expect, or things come higher than you thought, or especially when you're starting out a business, it's not as easy. You think you're going to have, a certain amount of revenue, or you think expenses are going to be a certain level, and you're trying to constrain them at that, but you get these surprises, right? So can you talk about how to manage that then if it's not as cut and dried as they would hope?
Well, so I think the reason you have surprises is because you didn't plan, right? All our plans include contingencies for surprises, right? Plus, we keep extra cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't deploy every dollar that comes into the business because the reality of it is running a business is a roller coaster ride. And I think prior to COVID, everyone was like, well, we'll just sell more. And
Mm-hmm.
COVID hits and all of a sudden they realize they can't sell more. Right. Or maybe their business did take off during COVID. You hit a recession and they used to come more often. These days,
Mm-hmm.
the government's just handing out money left and right. At some point, it's going to come. You have to be prepared for these things. They're not really surprises. It's just normal. Things always take twice as long as you think they're going to take,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things always cost more than you think they're going to cost. If you don't have an efficient operating system, which is what a business is, then you're going to have more and more surprises. It's just life. And I think too often business owners are extremely optimistic. Really, what you need to be is you need to have an optimistic forecast, a normalized forecast, and a pessimistic forecast. And I think too often we build up our fixed costs like employees, and sales drop, and we take too long to react.
Mm-hmm.
Money spent is gone. You don't get it back. Right. And if your sales go below that, you're losing money every month. And it happens all the time. And if you don't know that you've gone negative, then you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Right.
And I think that's the problem is they don't have leading indicators of what is going to happen. You can do a cash flow forecast. They're not that difficult. They're actually pretty easy. And you can start to predict your future and you can start to see when these problems are going to occur. And at the same point, let's just say you're in the trades and your truck is 12 years old and has 180,000 miles on it. Please don't be surprised when the transmission breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that wasn't a surprise. It's an expected cost. Same thing goes for all your equipment and your employees. Let's face it, your employees are not taught to save money. They aren't taught to be efficient at work. They're just like, hey, I get paid by the hour. So does it matter to me? No. And if you don't train that and you don't teach that, then everything's going to take twice as long as it took
Mm-hmm.
you. You have a different mentality than they do. That's why you're the owner. But you also have to come to grips with reality of who you've got working for you and the things that occur.
Mm-hmm. Right. So how can they then create these systems, create more efficiencies so that they can make sure that they have the consistent profitability and the cash flow that they need to run their businesses?
Aren't you Clockwork certified now? They
Yes.
should call you. I mean, Clockwork is one of Mike's other books. It's a
Mhm.
great way to do it. There are other systems just like Clockwork that are out there. And then the other thing is just having checklists and systems. So let's talk about McDonald's. McDonald's, everyone thinks they're in the hamburger business. They're not. They're in the real estate business.
Mhm.
Understand that. They know that. But whenever you walk into McDonald's, there's a certain experience. And you get it relatively the same wherever you go. They built systems and processes to be able to do that. And if you look at your business, ask yourself, can I take a week of vacation? Because if you can't, then you're the bottleneck. And if you're the
Mhm.
bottleneck, your business is less valuable. And so you've got to build out these systems and processes to have consistent delivery of whatever it is that you do. And I'm guessing every day there's problems at McDonald's, but yet they know how to solve them because they've got systems and processes and backups in place to deal with it all. And I think business owners need to do the same. And again, you know, looking at numbers is a hat. Building systems is a hat. Don't expect people who do the work to know how to build the system to do the work. It's a different hat. And business owners have to wear multiple hats. And if you're not good at wearing that hat, it's going to be a problem. It's like driving a Ferrari. I can go buy a Ferrari, but if it's got a flat tire, where am I going? Well, if your
Nowhere.
business has one of those, you know, if something in your business isn't running, you've got a flat tire. And it doesn't matter that you're bringing in $5 million in revenue because your system's broken and your business is going to leak cash.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of people maybe who've never even heard of Parkinson's law. So I would love for you to explain what that is and then how entrepreneurs can use it to their advantage in managing their finances.
So Parkinson's law basically says you will use up all the time and money that have been allocated to the job. So if you've got a project, you know, the first thing the sales guy asks you is, you know, what's your timeline and what's your budget? Whatever that timeline and budget, that's what it is. If it's $100,000 and 6 months, it's going to be actually be 110,000 in 8 months because that's just reality. But if you tell them, hey, I've got 3 weeks and 10 grand, you're going to figure it out. You're an entrepreneur. You're resourceful. You know how to do this. You just got to constrain things. We get a little too lazy and, you know, that happens. And so what Parkinson's law is, it's just about constraining it. And that law applies everywhere, right? So if your kid's got a book report and has 3 weeks to do the book report, how many of them are starting on day one? Nobody. Right? They're all waiting till the day before it's due. It's amazing what you can get done in the last minute, right? And it's just human nature and in life. And you just have to realize that. And what Parkinson's law is explains that. And that's the same principles of profit first. It's built on Parkinson's law. If you've got less money to spend in your business, so going back to the sports analogy, you know, many teams in sports have what they call a salary cap, right? This is your salary cap. Figure out, you know, who you're going to pay and who you're not going to pay on the team. In business, you essentially have a salary cap in your business. Do you know what your salary cap is? Do you know where and how you're going to allocate those dollars appropriately? Or are you going to blow your salary cap? Because you blow the salary cap, that's money coming out of your pocket. And so what we're trying to do is constrain you and teach you to be efficient because it is so easy to throw money at problems. And that's what we all do, instead of figuring out how to be more resourceful.
Right. But sometimes people feel that's just easier, right? Instead of having to figure out the problem and solve that problem, because once again, oh, I'm too busy, right? I don't have time. Then that's what they think, well, I'll just pay the extra for now. I'll figure it out later.
Yeah. When does later ever happen?
Right.
I mean, look, this is just human psychology. And until we realize it and look in the mirror, this is what it is. And let's face it, if you as the business owner are throwing money at the problem, what do you think your employees are doing? They're going, oh, we throw money at problems. So they throw your money at problems because it's not their money. What do they care?
Right. Exactly.
And that's what happens.
Well, I was going to say, I know this has been informative. I know we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more that entrepreneurs need to know about this topic, but we are getting close to the end of the time we have together. So I'd love to ask if you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners, and also how can they contact you?
So we don't have an offer per se, but what we do is everything that we share with our clients and we do for our clients, we share on the podcast, Profit Answer Man. And all we talk about is how to have a more profitable business while working less. So check it out if you like listening to podcasts. And, you know, that's probably a good way to get a hold of me. The website is Profit Comes First. And at the website, you can find all our information, contact, and everything else.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rocky, for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate our discussion that we were able to have today because I know it's so important for entrepreneurs to really understand this concept.
Thank you so much for having me, Candy.
To the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.